Hey, good evening. How are you all? I'm sure that by now you've heard about the second attempt on Trump's life down there while he was playing golf in Palm Beach. I don't think I'll get into the particulars. I'm sure that everybody else is going to be covering, and I want to, it's the apparently alert law enforcement stumbled upon a couple of backpacks and an AK leaning against a fence. What kind of silliness is that? And fired on the. Now I've heard this, and remember that information is fluid. When it first comes out, we're gonna find out that the initial information isn't exactly right. How far it strays from the truth, who knows? It's going to a little bit, and then how much is massaged later on. The shooter apparently was anywhere from 3 to 500 yards from Trump. Not a hard shot with an AK. And a couple of interesting things. There was an AK, and they apparently were hiding in some bushes. That'll mean something to some of you who know. I won't go into that. Um, and a lot of things came together to where they were able to immediately arrest the suspect and and identify him. I don't remember what his name is. Doesn't matter. I'm sure everybody else in the world will be talking about him. Did the Secret Service, they say, fired on him? Did they not hit him, or what? We don't know that. Apparently, he's not dead, which is interesting in that the little guy on the slope roof was dead. Uh, Here's all I want to say about this tonight. That it's becoming more dangerous because the Democrats are realizing that it's going to be almost impossible for them to get close enough to make a cheat believable. Okay, and the more they feel that, the more things they're going to try. So I would expect for there to be, let me put it this way, I wouldn't be surprised for there to be more attempts like this. Um, and then also, now what ought to happen? What ought to happen? There ought to be an investigation within 48 hours. We ought to know exactly who is responsible for allowing this area to not have the security that it should have. There ought to be people fired. There ought to be people. If you ran an investigation, I will guarantee you would find that there is a coordinated attempt to allow Trump to be assassinated. Let me just put it that way. Is that oblique enough? You all understand what I mean. If they can't get that done, because I've heard people say they're not going to allow I'm going to throw out something interesting here. I've heard people say they're not going to allow an election. Well, I've always kind of argued against that. But if they're unable to take Trump out, and if I were Trump, I mean, I would beef up my personal security beyond belief. I would have my own personal drones everywhere. I don't care what the Secret Service said. If the Secret Service can't do their job, somebody else has to do their job, and screw them. And I will say something about law enforcement here also. Uh, Many people make comments about law enforcement who were never in law enforcement, don't know about law enforcement. Maybe they're really pro law enforcement or they're really anti law enforcement. Uh, but I will say this: there's still a lot of good people in law enforcement. There's a lot of dregs too. I'll be real honest. I mean, the dregs started coming in when I was on in the early '70s during affirmative action, and maybe I'll do one on that on Patreon. But there are some good folks still in law enforcement, even though I would say most of the best have left since Obama, and they didn't start bringing in good ones. It's just like the military. Okay, um, but there are still good ones. But the problem is always at the top, always the top. I don't know of a single big city police chief or command staff that is not 100% politician and pretty much, when you get down to it, in the pocket of the Democrats. And I would say that goes through much of law enforcement. Now, it doesn't necessarily go to the smaller town police chiefs or many of the sheriffs, but that's different. It's situational, okay? Um, but the problems that we're seeing now with federal law enforcement, as far as I'm concerned, every federal law enforcement agency should be defunded, disbanded, and put on the scrap heap. Investigations run into them, charges brought when they're appropriate, and action taken, and then start again from scratch. There is very little, to be honest, that local law enforcement can't handle. Somebody's going to come on here who hasn't been in law enforcement and say, well, yeah, but the feds, they can do this and they can do that, and they can. Well, the Phoebes Phoebes, that's what we call the FBI. They have a good lab. Okay, other than that, there are some good guys out there, but, and their leadership sucks. As does the leadership in most of the federal law enforcement agencies. Perhaps all. Okay, so that needs to be done with. There really shouldn't be any. I'll go ahead and say this. I think I've said it before. There shouldn't be any federal criminal law. There's no reason for there to be federal criminal laws. That was never the intent of the federal government. Okay, the criminal law is applied at the state level. Simple as that. That's what the states do. There doesn't need to be a state law against murder and a federal law against murder, or the things they stack on, and it's not exactly that. But there shouldn't be any federal criminal law. But they do need to find out about this. What I was getting at here is that there is something that they might do, and I think that I'll wait until tomorrow. Yeah, I'm just telling you. I'm not necessarily trying to tease you out. I'm just not going to lump this in with this video. There is something that had just occurred to me recently that they might do that is, I don't think I've ever heard anybody mention it, and it is beyond what most people would think about, that would guarantee that there would not be an election. And it would come down in the Democrat favor. Okay, maybe I'll talk about that tomorrow. Anyway, we will see what's happened. Secret Service, I feel sorry for the good guys out there who are still trying to do their job. You work for a suck agency, sorry, be that as it may. We'll see what happens. You all have a good night. Bye-bye.